Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video we'll be taking a look at all the miniatures available for the OSSIARCH Bonereapers and seeing how we can use them for a Warcry warband. We recently saw the Bonereapers being revealed as the next warband to come out for Warhammer Underworlds, and I thought this would be a great time to take a look at the Bringers of Death Warcry book and see how we can put together a warband for the Bonereapers for a Warcry warband. So in this video, we'll take a look at the Bonereapers, have a look at their background, what they're doing in the 8 points, and how they fit into the Warcry world. Then we'll also take a look at all the miniatures that you can buy on the Games Workshop website and all the miniatures available for the Age of Sigmar game. Then we'll take a close look at the fighter and leader abilities for the Bonereapers, and then we'll look at fighter cards that match the miniatures available and go through all their statistics. Bedecked in morbid finery and wielding deadly nadirite blades, the OSSIARCH Bonereapers form the elite armies of undead, a relentless and disciplined legion of conquest. None can hope to stand before their tireless advance. The OSSIARCH Bonereapers embody Nagash's ultimate vision for the realms. They are no simple revenants drawn wholesale from the grave. Each is an investment, a blend of arcane bone masonry and necromantic soul splicing to create the ultimate army of undead. The body of each OSSIARCH is a construct of bone taken from the remains of the living and reshaped through dark magic. Their souls, contained within the black gems mounted upon their chests, are composite entities forged through the mixing of stolen animus. Discipline, loyalty, and cold fury will be retained in the captured souls, whilst notions of honour, compassion, and doubt will be brutally stripped away. Such is in keeping with the malicious precision through which Nagash rules his realm. The OSSIARCHs are but an extension of these beliefs, a morbid legion of conquerors as darkly majestic as they are ruthless. So as the backstory goes, that's pretty cool. So the OSSIARCH Bonereapers really are quite different to a lot of the other warbands that have featured so far and that we've used in Warcry. So really interesting background, but just what are they doing in the 8 points and how do they fit into Warcry? It tells us in the Bringers of Death book that the Bonereapers have accomplished a fate unmatched by any other force on either side of the grave, and they've established a permanent, large-scale and fortified foothold in the 8 points. This fortress is practically unassailable, a testament to the martial mastery of the Bonereapers and a symbol of defiance against Archaon's rule. And it was quite literally built using the remains of the former garrison of Karhite, the fortress that once guarded the Archway. From this stronghold, the Bonereapers then strike out across the 8 points to either spread terror, collect tithes of bones, or find lost relics that are forged from gravesand, and also to cull the Chaos Warbands that dwell in the wastes. So these are a pretty sinister bunch, and there's tons of potential here for some great narrative. But one also thing it mentions in the book is that they're kind of hell-bent on future conquests, and so they're mapping out the 8 points ready for an invasion of their army. So that's pretty cool, and I think that could really give some good ideas from which to build a warband for the Bonereapers. Now we know a little bit about their background and what they're doing in the 8 points, let's start taking a look at the fighters themselves and going through the fighter and ability cards for all the miniatures that you can buy from the Games Workshop website. Let's start with the ability that any fighter within the warband who's got the Bonereapers rune mark, they're going to have this available to them. And this is a double called Nadirite Weapon. And it says add 1 to the damage points allocated by each hit and critical hit from attack actions made by this fighter, this activation, that have a range characteristic of 3 or less. So this ability really plays into the idea that they're out to deal damage, punish anyone they come across. And so for a double, this is pretty powerful. You can add 1 to damage points allocated by every hit and every critical hit from attack actions made by a fighter during the activation. So that means if they make 2 attack actions that activation, this double is going to apply to it. So a pretty strong double to get started with, and really gives us an introduction as to what the Bone Reapers are all about. This is the only ability that any of the fighters with the Bone Reaper's rune mark can use, and the leaders can use this as well. But let's take a look at the leader ability, and this is the leader ability that any fighter with the leader rune mark and the Bone Reaper's rune mark are going to be able to use. And this is a triple called Unstoppable Advance. Until the end of the battle round, add half the value of this ability, rounding up, to the move characteristic of friendly fighters that are in the same battle group as this fighter. So this is a really nice ability, a triple, so it's quite high to be able to use, but the chances of getting a triple, you're going to get a triple quite often in the hero phase. And it says here, until the end of the battle round, add half the value of the ability moving up to move characteristics of friendly fighters in the same battle group. So this is really interesting, rather than it being to friendly fighters within 3 or 6 inches or visible, then instead it's the ones that are in the same battle group. So that's really cool. I like this. I like that little twist on the ability there. And so you'd really want to be putting your leader in with maybe 3 other fighters if you really want to push this and have a kind of load of fighters moving forward. And so for our kind of leader ability that all the leaders can use, I think this is really great. And when you combine this with the ability we've just seen for all the fighters, this really kind of gives us a good introduction to the Bone Reapers. They're all about driving forward, punishing the enemy, dishing out damage, and just keeping that pressure on. So that should set us up now as we move forward and start looking at the individual fighters, the models, and the fighter cards and abilities that come with them. And starting with the leaders, the first one is the Liege Cavalos, and you buy him as a single miniature from Games Workshop. And for Warcry, he's going to come in at 250 points. He's on a mount, so he's got a good amount of movement there. So he's got a movement of 8, pretty tough with a toughness 5, and can take 32 wounds. He's got the leader rune mark and 2 other rune marks. One of those rune marks is the mounted rune mark, so that's not going to apply necessarily to abilities, but it is going to limit him with things like moving through doorways and things like that. And weapon-wise, he's got 1 weapon with a range of 1, can make 4 attacks, strength 4, dealing 2 to 5 on a crit. So, pretty round, 250 points. He's not dealing as much damage as I would expect for that amount, but he does have a good amount of toughness, and 8 movement is very nice. Moving on to the abilities, he's going to get that triple that we've just gone through, the Unstoppable Advance, but he also gets a double called Endless Duty. A fighter can use this ability only if an enemy fighter has been taken down by an attack action made by them this activation. This fighter makes a bonus move action or a bonus attack action. This is pretty good for a double, so we're getting either a bonus attack action or a bonus move action, but the condition is that they had to have taken down an enemy fighter with an attack action, that activation. So pretty good for a double, very nice, and you'd certainly want to be using that on the mount, making the most of that high movement there. So yeah, pretty good ability there, and this is our first leader. So let's move on to the second one. So this model is called the Arch Cavalos Xandtos, and he's £30, and he's just the same. You buy him as a separate single miniature, and I thought you could proxy this one as the Liege Cavalos, no problem. So if you wanted to use him, he's going to have the same fighter card as the Liege Cavalos, and also he's going to get the same abilities that we've just gone through. Our next fighter, which is another leader called the Mortisand Bone Shaper, and I think this could be one of my favourites from all of the miniatures available for the Bone Reapers. This is another miniature you'd buy on its own, and it's £17.50, and I think it just looks really cool. But for Warcry, this one would come out at 185 points, with a movement 4, a toughness 4, and can take 20 wounds. We've got the leadership rune mark and 1 other rune mark, and a choice of 2 weapons. So this is kind of almost a bit magical, this miniature, and so we're going to get the typical magic kind of weapon statistics, which would be a 3 to 7 range, minimum 3, maximum 7, can make 2 attacks, strength 3, dealing 3 to 6 on a crit, and then we've also got the second weapon, so if they get up close, they can hit them with a range of 1, make 3 attacks, strength 3, dealing 1 to 4 on a crit. So damage output is not huge here, but you're looking at the abilities and what they bring, and you also get some extra wounds that they can take. So let's move on and take a look at the abilities. So the Bone Shaper's got the triple unstoppable advance that we've seen, and also another triple that's specific to them called the Bone Shaper's Art. Remove up to 1 damage point allocated to each friendly fighter within 6 inches of this fighter. So a real nice simple ability, a nice triple, especially if there's a lot of fighters within 6 inches of this one. And as a Bone Shaper, this kind of plays into the narrative that they can heal the other fighters. So if you've got, like, say 3, 4 or even 5 friendly fighters within 6 inches, they don't have to be visible. As long as they're within 6 inches of this leader, then they're all going to benefit from having that 1 point of damage removed. So that's a pretty good ability for a triple and can really start to kind of add to the strong force that the Bone Reapers are going to look to put on the enemy. This next miniature is called Mortisand, Master of the Bone Tithe, and I think this is another one you could proxy with, and this would make a good Mortisand Bone Shaper. But as Master of the Bone Tithe, I think this would be a good mini to kind of fit in with the narrative. So if you're looking at setting up warbands of Bone Reapers to go search in the land for relics and bone tithes, then having Mortisand as your leader would be a real good narrative play. And so I've included this card for that miniature here. And this one would get the abilities that we've gone through for the previous leader. Our next one is called a Mortisand Soulmason. This is a strange looking mini. It's got this guy kind of sat cross-legged in this almost like mechanical walking contraption. So a real strange one. And again, it's another leader. This is certainly using the Mystic rune mark. So we're looking at kind of more magic again here. So this would be a really interesting leader to use. And at 200 points, you're getting a movement of 4, toughness 4, can take 25 wounds. The walking contraption means he's classed as being mounted, so it's going to have some restrictions, and then he's got the leader rune mark and the mystic rune mark. I would have expected a bit more movement here, being that he is mounted, so I'm not sure quite what benefit he's getting from that. Maybe a little bit of toughness, but otherwise not a lot else, more restrictions if anything. But weapons wise, pretty similar to the previous leader we saw, with the kind of magic weapon, minimum 3, maximum 7 range, 2 attacks, strength 3, dealing 3 to 6 on a crit. And then we've got this second weapon, so he's got like this club, so he's got a range of 2, can make 3 attacks, strength 3, dealing 2 to 4 on a crit. So putting out a little bit extra damage there. But let's see what the mystic ability brings and see how this would kind of influence whether you would choose to have the Mortisand Soulmason as your leader or not. So we've got that triple unstoppable advance again, and he's also got his own one called Soul Guide, another triple, and it says here, until the end of the battle round, add 1 to the attack's characteristics of attack actions that have a range characteristic of 3 or less made by visible friendly fighters while they are within 3 inches of this fighter. Okay, so this guy is kind of giving people extra attacks, so he's going to improve their attack characteristic for all their attack actions, but they've got to have a range of 3 or less, they've got to be visible, and they've got to be within 3 inches of this fighter. So quite a few conditions to make that come off, and both the abilities available to this leader are again triples, and so if you like the sound of that, this might be the leader that you would choose. And we've got another option for a leader here called the Mortisand Soul Reaper. This is a nice looking miniature. I really like this one, and this could be really cool. And I think the miniature we've seen released for Underworlds could also fit in with this fighter card. So this is the Mortisand Soul Reaper at 195 points. It's got the leader rune mark and another rune mark. And so he's going to get a different ability we haven't seen yet. It's got a movement of 4, toughness 4, can take 20 wounds. Weapons, very similar to the previous ones. The magic weapon with the 3 to 7 range, 2 attack, strength 3, 3 to 6 on a crit. A little bit different here now on the second one. Got a range of 2, 3 attacks, strength 4, dealing 2 to 4 on a crit. So he hasn't got as many kind of wounds or damage he can take as the previous leader, but he's a bit stronger. And then let's see what the ability does for him and see if that's something that's going to influence choosing him. As with all the other leaders, he's going to get the Unstoppable Advance, but he's also going to get a quad called Soul Reaper Scythe. Allocate a number of damage points equal to the value of this ability to all visible enemy fighters within 3 inches of this fighter. So this could be a seriously good ability. It's a quad, so it's quite high, not going to come up as much as you'd like, but if you can get this and you roll in 4, 5s or 6s for the value of that ability, then you can deal that many damage points to every visible enemy fighter within 3 inches of this fighter. So if you get a quad, move him straight in, use the ability. You may use 2 movement actions, that activation, to get close enough. But if there's a bunch of enemy fighters all grouped together, you could just go in and just wreak havoc on them with this one. So that's a great ability, and probably my favourite so far, and I really like that one for a quad. That takes care of most of the leaders, and we'll see a couple more coming up as we work through the different sets. But now we're on to the Death Riders. And with this set, you're going to get a choice of 2 fighters from these. And the Death Riders, they're going to come in at £35 for a set, and you're going to get 5 miniatures. And you can choose to build them as Death Riders with spear or with a blade. And both are 170 points. Both have got the same movement 8, toughness 5, can take 20 wounds. And they've both got the same rune marks. So both mounted, and they've got this extra rune mark. So they're going to get a separate fighter ability that we haven't come across yet. And weapon-wise, if you choose the blade, they're going to have a range of 1, can make 3 attacks, strength 3, dealing 2 to 4 on a crit. But if you choose the spear, you've got a little bit extra range. So range of 2, you've got 2 attacks, strength 3, dealing 2 to 5 on a crit. So just choosing which one you want to go for. Do you want more attacks, or do you want fewer attacks but can deal more damage? So just got to weigh that up really, and also see about the range. Do you want that extra range? So there we go, there's 2 options you can get with that set, but we can also choose to get a leader out of this too. But let's look at the abilities for these 2 Death Riders first, and then we'll see the abilities and statistics for the leader that you could choose to build from this set. We've gone through the double Nadirite weapon already, but these Death Riders, they're going to get a triple called Death Rider Charge. Until the end of this fighter's activation, the next time this fighter finishes a move action within 1 inch of an enemy fighter, pick a visible enemy fighter within 1 inch of this fighter. Allocate a number of damage points to that fighter equal to the value of this ability. So this is a good one. You know, it's a triple, so you're going to get a good chance to use it quite often throughout the different battle rounds. But here, you know, you've got to finish a move action within 1 inch of an enemy, then pick another visible enemy or the same one, as long as they're within 1 inch of this fighter, and then simply allocate a number of damage points that are equal to the ability. So again, a 4, 5 or 6 value ability, you can instantly deal that much damage as a bonus kind of ability action, if you like. And so that's pretty useful, and with that range as well, that movement, you can get in there, maybe do a little attack and then use this on top. So you could really see how this would finish off some fighters and do some damage to the enemy. So that's pretty good. And now let's have a look at the leader option that you can build from this set. And here he is. This is called Kavalos Death Rider Mortek Hakatos. So that's a bit of a mouthful, a big name, and he comes in with a big number of points too, with a value of 240. It's got a movement of 8, toughness 5, can take 30 wounds, so pretty tough this guy, can really take some damage. He's got the leader rune mark, the mounted rune mark, and the ability rune mark, and we've seen that ability already. And for the weapon, it's a range of 1, can make 4 attacks, strength 4, dealing 2 to 4 on a crit. So this guy's pretty tough, got a decent movement range, and can take some damage, but he's not dishing all that much damage out. But let's see what his abilities are, just to recap. I think we've gone through all these already, but let's just recap. Yeah, so just like the Death Riders, he's going to get those 2 fighter abilities, and then as a leader, he can use the triple unstoppable advance ability, but there's not going to be any extra abilities for him here. So often with these, when you choose a leader from a set of like standard fighters, they don't often come with extra leader abilities and are not great choices, unless you want to have like all mounted troops or mounted fighters in your warband or something like that, or you're playing along to some kind of narrative. But otherwise, I would usually go for a purposely built leader, because you just get more abilities, more playability with them. Next, we're on to the Necropolis Stalkers, and these come with Spirit Blades or Dread Falcons. And the Spirit Blades are 200 points, and the Dread Falcons are 205. Both fighters have got a movement of 5, toughness 4, can take 30 wounds. They've got a rune mark that we haven't seen yet, so we'll check out their fighter rune mark after this. And the Spirit Blades have got a weapon range of 1, can make 5 attacks, strength 4, dealing 2 to 5 on a crit. And the Dread Falchions have got a weapon range of 1 with 3 attacks, strength 5, dealing 3 to 6 on a crit. So it's really deciding which one you like the sound of. Do you want to do more damage with fewer attacks and a lot more strength? So the chances are you come up against some of the bigger kind of enemy fighters, you can really still do some serious damage and have more of a chance of rolling those big hits. Or do you want to take like the Spirit Blades and then have more attacks with a still pretty tough with a 2 to 5 damage output, but only a strength 4. So this is more geared towards taking out lots of the lower point enemy fighters. So with these two, the Necropolis Stalkers, I think you've got a nice option. You've got one who's like a giant killer going after the big guys, the champions, and you've got the other one who just goes around hacking away at the chaff and taking out lots of enemy fighters in perhaps even one turn. So 2 nice options here, and these really are some good fighters that I like a lot. But let's look at this rune mark and see what abilities they're going to get. So we've already seen the double Netherite weapon that they all get, but this is great. These fighters also get 2 other abilities. They get a double and a quad. So let's do the double first, and that's called Hunt and Kill. A fighter can use this ability only if there is a visible enemy fighter within 6 inches of them. This fighter makes a bonus move action and must finish closer to the closest visible enemy fighter than they were at the start of that move action. So this is really nice for a double. They really want to move in and get as close as they can to the enemy. So you want to get these in amongst the enemy, dealing the damage, and they can certainly take some damage. So they're going to get in there in perhaps 1 round, and then in the second round, just unleash all their weapons, do some serious damage. So that's a really nice double. But let's look at the quad next. And this is called Blade Strike Aspect. Add the value of this ability to the attack's characteristics of attack actions made by this fighter, this activation. So this is a great ability, and it's a quad though, so it's quite high, and whether you want to use your quad on a fighter like this would be dependent on the situation, I guess. But this is brilliant, especially if you're going in with the fighter that's got those 5 attack characteristic already, and then you're rolling a 5 or 6 for your ability value. You could potentially be going in with 10 or 11 attacks. So you roll in 10, 11 dice with a strength 4, dealing 2 to 5 on a crit. And against some big enemy fighters, that's going to do some serious damage. So I really like these 2. And I think they're probably my favourite so far about all the fighters we've gone through up to now. And so I definitely want to include some of these in my warband for sure. But let's move on to the next ones, because there's loads more coming. So this is great. So before I started making this video, I wasn't too keen on these, but after going through their abilities and learning a bit about them, they're certainly growing on me. And here's another cool fighter called the Immortis Guard, and at 200 points, he's got a movement of 4, has a toughness 5, can take 30 wounds, and he's got the Bulwark rune mark, so we know he's going to be pretty tough and come with an ability we haven't seen yet. His weapon's got a range of 1, can make 2 attacks, strength 5, dealing 3 to 5 on a crit. So for 200 points, he's very similar to the Necropolis Stalkers, who were doing a lot of damage with a high output. But this guy's only going to make 2 attacks, but it is a strength 5, and it is 3 or 5, depending on whether it's a normal hit or a crit. So that's not bad at all, and its toughness is 5 too. So he's certainly going to be hard to hit, and he's going to take some damage alongside that. But let's see what this rune mark's going to get him, because this will be a specific rune mark that we haven't seen yet. So we've seen the double Netherite weapon, but these have also got another double called Form Shield Wall. Until the end of the battle round, add 1 to the toughness characteristic of this fighter. In addition, until the end of the battle round, add 1 to the toughness characteristic of friendly fighters with the Bulwark rune mark while they are within 3 inches of this fighter. So this is a pretty good ability. It doesn't look great on the surface, especially when you think that these guys are tough already with a toughness 5, but they can add another 1 to that, so they're going to go up to a toughness 6. But you can also add it to other friendly fighters who are within 3 inches of this fighter. And that doesn't have to just apply to these characters. This can also, the Immortis Guard, this can also apply to the Mortec Guard, as long as they've got the same Bulwark rune mark, and we'll see those in a little while. So it could be quite useful to include one of these alongside some regular guards with lower points, just to benefit from that extra toughness, because he can really bring up a lot of fighters and improve their toughness, and they'd be pretty hard to hit then. So let's look at the next fighters now. And these next fighters are called the Mortec Guard, and these come in at £35 for a set. And you get quite a few in there. You're looking at, what, 20 fighters for £35? And you've got some variety. So all up, you can make 3 fighters. You can have the Mortec Guard with Netherite Blade. You can have them with the Netherite Spear or with the Soul Cleaver Great Blade. Now, the Netherite Blade and the Netherite Spear, they're going to come with that Bulwark rune mark. So we know we can use them then with the Immortis Guard, but they'll also get this ability themselves. So you don't have to have the Immortis Guard to activate this ability, because they could as well. But I think it would be quite interesting to put that together as a little kind of warband or section of a warband. It'd be quite fun. But the third one, the third option for these fighters is the Soul Cleaver Great Blade, and he doesn't come with that Bulwark rune mark. So altogether, we're looking at 85 points for the Spear and Blade and 95 for the Great Blade. And the Blade and Spear, they're going to be movement 3, toughness 5, and they can take 10 wounds. Whereas the Great Blade is a movement 3, toughness a little bit less at 4, but can still take 10 wounds, but doesn't get that rune mark. The weapon stats are a little bit different, with the Netherite Blade being a range of 1, 3 attacks, strength 3, 1 to 3 on a crit, which we'd expect for this sort of points kind of value. And then the next one, the Spear's got that extra range. It's got range of 2, but only 2 attacks. So with a strength 3, dealing 1 to 4 on a crit. So they can deal more on a crit. They get less attacks, but they got a little bit extra range. So you lose some and gain some for that. But with the Cleaver Great Blade, he's 10 more points. Doesn't come with a rune mark, but you do get some good value for that extra 10 points, I think. You get a weapon range of 1. He can make 3 attacks, strength 4, dealing 2 to 5 on a crit. And being able to deal 2 to 5 on a crit with those 3 attacks, I think is really good for a fighter with a 95 point value. So for me, of the 3, the Great Blade, the Soul Cleaver Great Blade, really stands out. But let's have a quick look at the abilities that are going to come with them. So the Great Blade, he's just going to get that double Netherite weapon, but the other 2, they're going to get the Form Shield Wall double in addition to that. And we've gone through all these already. From this Mortec Guard set, you can also build a Mortec Hakatos, which is a leader, and at 180 points, he's going to get a movement of 3, toughness 5, and can take 20 damage. He's got the leader rune mark and the Bulwark rune mark. He's got a weapon range of 1, can make 4 attacks, strength 4, dealing 2 to 4 on a crit. So pretty well-rounded leader there for 180 points. He's got that ability, which doesn't really, the Bulwark ability, which doesn't really stand out as a leadership ability. As we've seen, fighters with 85 points can get that ability. And so let's just have a recap of the abilities he's going to get, though, as a leader. So as a leader, he's going to get that triple unstoppable advance. And then as a regular fighter abilities as well, he's going to get the double Netherite weapon and the double Form Shield Wall. So a little bit going on there. But I think this is good because you could pick up that Mortec Guard set, have 20 fighters, one of them could be a leader, and you've got a warband immediately set up. Sure, there'll all be you'll only have 3 varieties plus your leader, but I think if you wanted to set up maybe a narrative battle and you didn't want to spend too much on this kind of Bone Reaper warband, then this is an option just to grab that Mortec Guard set, and you've got an immediate warband. I think it would be quite fun to play, and they're pretty strong and tough to beat, so that'd be interesting. It's almost taking the Legions of Nagash up to the next level and going at it with them. So that's one option you could do. Now we're on to these big guys, the Morghast Harbingers, and they're going to come with a Spirit Halberd or Spirit Swords. Point-wise, very similar, 235 or 230. They're both going to get a movement 8 with a toughness 4, taking 35 wounds. And they both come with the Fly rune mark and a rune mark for an ability we haven't seen yet. So we'll have to check that out in a second. And then for the weapon stats, for the Spirit Halberd, they're going to get a range of 1, 2 attacks, strength 5, dealing 3 to 5 on a crit. And with the Spirit Swords, they're a range of 1, 4 attacks, strength 4, dealing 2 to 4 on a crit. So quite high points, 230, 235, can take a serious amount of damage, got a nice movement, and they can fly. Their damage output isn't that brilliant, but could still be quite handy, but I think it's going to depend a lot on what this ability is. So let's take a look at that now. Here we go. So we've seen the double Netherite weapon, and now they've got a triple we haven't seen yet called Unbridled Ferocity. This fighter makes a bonus move action. So really simple, probably the most simple ability we've seen yet, and it's a triple, and they can simply just make a bonus move action. So with a movement of 8, and they can fly, they can really get around the battlefield. So stealing objectives and then holding them with that like huge toughness and huge amount of damage they can take. They're pretty good. So getting them to an objective and holding it while the other fighters move in would be a great tactic for these. Okay, so that's these Morgust Harbingers. Now let's move on to the next ones. These are called the Morgust Akai, and they come with Spirit Swords or Halberd, and these are a little bit higher in value. They're 245 points and 250 points. And I should say, if you wanted to buy these, they're £37.50 for 2 miniatures. And that's the same for the Morgust Harbingers, £37.50 for 2. So they must be quite big. So these must be big models for that much money. But yeah, so points-wise, 245, 250. They've both got a movement 8, toughness 5, and can take 35 wounds. And they can both fly. And they don't have any other rune marks. So no special abilities here. So damage-wise, the Spirit Swords, they've got a weapon range of 1, can make 4 attacks, strength 4, dealing 2 to 4 on a crit. And the Spirit Halberd has got a range of 1 with 2 attacks, strength 5, dealing 3 to 5 on a crit. So these are really high, 245 to 250 points. That's reflected in how much damage they can take. So 35 is a lot of damage. But in my mind, they're not really dealing a lot of damage. They don't have any abilities, but they can fly. So I don't really, for me, these don't appeal. I think they're quite high. You're not getting an awful lot for those points. So I'd certainly be more tempted to go for the Morgust Harbingers, who've got that triple ability, Unbridled Ferocity, which is going to really help them move around. But let's move on to the next models now, and we're coming to the end. We've almost worked our way through all the ones available, and so let's go to the next one. This next one's called Arkan the Black, Mortarch of Sacrament. And he's £48 if you wanted to buy this one model. So it's got to be quite big. And I couldn't really see anywhere where he fitted directly in. I don't know whether you'd want to use him as a Morgust Harbinger, because he looks like he's going to cover a lot of ground. And then he'd get these fighter abilities. Or whether you wanted to use him as a leader and swap him for the Liege Cavalos. But I think perhaps this model would be pushing it a bit much. He's really big. You might be able to use it as like a chariot kind of model that we've seen in the recent release from the Warhammer community site, where they put out Warcry like Fated Quest, and that included stats for a chariot. So you could apply that to this guy. That might work. But otherwise, I think we're pushing it to really slot him in to one of the fighter cards included in the Bringers of Death book. And that takes us on to this one called the Gothizar Harvester. And this is £30 if you just wanted to buy this one miniature. So quite big. It's got to be a good size. And again, there's nowhere where he really fitted in with any of the fighter cards. I also looked at the monsters for Bringers of Death, and they were more like Terrorgeist or dragons, so they were going to be flying. And the abilities didn't really match the look of the miniature and the kind of weapons he's got. So I looked in the Agents of Chaos book and found the Slaughter Brute. And I thought he kind of matched the abilities a lot better. Now, you can't really bring in these monsters, as far as the rules go, into your warband. But the way the stats are done, Warcry is not a super balanced game. And to me, it doesn't even matter if I win or lose with Warcry. It's just the narrative. It's really narrative driven. And often losing can add to the kind of misery and suffering of it all, and kind of match in with the 8 points and what your warband's doing there. So I don't really have a problem mixing and matching a little bit. And if your opponent doesn't mind, I think this could be an option using the Slaughter Brute. And at 330 points, you're going to get a movement depending on the table you choose, toughness 4, up to 50 wounds. And he's got a couple of rune marks. One's the Gargantuan rune mark, so that's going to prevent him from doing certain things, taking part in certain battles like catacombs and things like that. And he's got another rune mark that's going to give him some abilities. He's got an attack range of 2, can make 5 attacks with a strength 4, and then the damage output is going to depend on the table you choose. So let's have a look at the table that comes with the monsters now. So here's the damage table that comes for all the monsters in the different Grand Alliance books. And you choose how many damage points you want to allocate to them, and then that decides their movement and also the damage output. So for example, if you chose to give them 20, then you just follow the other stats that go along that. And then ability wise, if you went with the Slaughter Brute abilities, you're going to get a double called Mighty Jaw, a triple called Rampage in Charge, and a quad called Beast Unbound. And I think these all kind of match the look and the feel of this fighter. So the Mighty Jaws, this one's got some jaws, he's packing some teeth there. So he can pick a visible enemy fighter within 1 inch of this fighter, roll a number of dice equal to the value of this ability, and for each 3+, allocate 1 damage point to that fighter. So that certainly fits in, as does the triple Rampage in Charge, where until the end of this fighter's activation, the next time this fighter finishes a move action within 1 inch of an enemy fighter, pick a visible enemy fighter within 1 inch of this fighter, then allocate a number of damage points to that fighter equal to the value of this ability. So again, that works with the narrative. This guy looks like he would go on a Rampage in Charge. It fits in with the Bone Reapers, push him forward, also fits in with that unstoppable advance ability that the leaders come with. So I think it makes sense to include that. Then finally we've got the quad, the Beast Unbound. This fighter makes a bonus attack action or a bonus move action. And again, that fits in with the kind of abilities we've seen, pushing that movement, and he can choose to make another attack. He's got these big kind of spiked balls on his fists, so he can make 2 attacks. It makes sense. So I think this one fits in too, but it is pushing it again, and as long as your opponent's happy though, I don't see a problem with flicking across and using the stats that would usually come with the Slaughter Brute. Now we're on to the models and miniatures that don't really fit in with Warcry or with the fighter cards, and this is one. I've got no idea what we do with this. If you've got any ideas, put it in the comments below. It'd be awesome to hear what you think, but for me, this one just wouldn't fit. We got this other thing, which is like a catapult, but I think you could use this as a kind of chariot, and with the stats from the recent campaign on the Warhammer community site, you could make this work. But again, I think this is pushing it, so I would leave this out. I mean, if you've got an Age of Sigmar army, there's a good chance you'll have something like that. You might have this set up here, which is, there's no way we're going to be able to play that in Warcry or use it for anything. But so some things were just not going to fit. These just look great, but again, no place in Warcry for me. But they do look cool. I really like these. I thought they were some of the best models that you can get for Bone Reapers. They look really cool. So I've took all the ones we can use and all the fighter cards, and I thought it'd be interesting to put together a 1,000-point warband and a 1,400-point warband for when we go on to campaigns. And so I've gone on for the Mortisand Bone Shaper as my leader at 185 points. Then I went for a Necropolis Stalker with Spirit Blades at 200. And I went for these two to kind of start things off. I really like the Bone Shaper, that kind of magic. I always like to have like a magical leader if I can. I think that's really fun. And I like the abilities, and the kind of healing ability was quite good. But the Necropolis Stalker with the Spirit Blades, I like those 5 attacks. Strength 4, dealing 2 to 5 on a crit. And then if we can combine that with the quad blade strike aspect and add the value of the ability to the attacks characteristic, this guy could be crazy good. So I really liked him. So I definitely wanted him in there as like the champion kind of figure. And then it was a toss-up of what to do. Do we go for another big fighter or just go for little ones? And so I've chose to go for the Mortec Guard with Nadirite Spear and include 5 of those. And here we'll really be taking advantage of that Bulwark ability, that Bulwark rune mark, and the ability that comes with it. So these guys are 5 toughness already, but with a double ability, they're going to get another 1 to their toughness and influence all the others around them that have got that Bulwark rune mark. So I really like that. I thought that would make a great setup. And then on top of that, having the other guy in there and having 2 of those, dishing out that high output. I think the damage they can deal for that pretty low 95 points value for the Great Blade. I really like the 3 attack, strength 4, 2 to 5. And they're pretty tough at 4 as well. So I think having those set up, you've got 9 in total, a good magical kind of mystic leader with healing abilities. Got this big tough guy dealing out the damage, and then 7 pretty serious contenders who can all form this kind of shield wall. I thought that would be really interesting to play. So now let's take a look at the next one, which is 1,400 points, and see what I've added to make it possible for a campaign warband. So in our campaign roster, we can have up to 20 fighters kind of in reserve, if you like, but we can only choose 1,400 worth of points as a maximum when we start going into battles, as long as we've got enough points accrued through dominated territory and spending glory points and things like that. So, but for me, a really great 1,400 point warband would be the same as we've just seen, the Mortisand Boneshaper, the Necropolis Stalker with the Spirit Blades, then we've got the Mortec Guard with spears and great blades. But then I thought, why don't we just add 2 more Necropolis Stalkers? They're 200 each, so we're bang on the 1,400 point limit. And then you'd have 3 crazy tough characters then to fight against. And I thought it might be good to put one in the dagger, hammer and shield, so you got 1 tough character in each of the deployments. I thought that would work out really nicely. So for me, this is a great 1,400 point army, and I think I'd be really happy to play this. And certainly they've really grown on me since I started making this video, and I'd be pretty keen to pick up this setup actually. So, but I do hope that Games Workshop bring out a specific Warcry warband for the Bone Reapers, so I don't have to buy lots of different sets, because they'll still be low down on my list of which ones to get, but I do like this setup. But I'd love to hear what you would do. What warband would you put together? Maybe you've done this already, and so what works, what's good, which fighters do you think work the best, and what abilities do you like? It'd be awesome to hear what you think, so please join in the comment section below and let me know what your ultimate Bone Reaper warband would be. And I'll put links in the description below to Element Games so you can pick up any of the sets you've seen here, and with that link you'll save up to 20%, and it'll be affiliate link, but it won't cost you anything extra. In fact, it's going to save you that money, and any sales made through the link, I'll get a small commission, and then I can use those to develop the channel. So thanks for that support, and if you want to support the channel in a different way, please check out my Patreon page. It's an awesome place where we hang out on Discord, talk about the hobby, we talk about Warcry, Underworlds, Cursed City, Frostgrave, anything you can think of, and it's really fun. We help each other and give each other support, share our projects, and you're also going to get some content there that you're not going to find anywhere else. So I'll put a link for that in the description too, and it'd be awesome to see you there. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. Please like if you like it, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games.